Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Stranger Things, Season 3, Episode 5, The Flayed. Alright, so finally, the Scoops Ahoy team. Alright, so who is that? That's Steve Harrington and Dustin Henderson. That is Robin and Erica. They make it through, right? And they have found the Russian control center, and they're all the way in at this point. And they actually kind of get a lay of the land and realize that they've snuck into a Russian command center beneath the Starcourt Mall, right? Like, so they've discovered, like, they have solved the mystery, and that mystery is very significant and and quite frightening, in reality, about what is actually happening at the Starcourt Mall. But they also realize they're in way over their head. Like, these are, some kids who were slinging ice cream, briefly, or, just a little while ago, and now they're literally in a Russian command center, a secret Russian base underneath Hawkins' lab, underneath Hawkins, right, where the Hawkins lab used to be, and actually specifically where Starcourt Mall was built. Okay. So at this point, they are, it's almost exactly the scene from Star Wars where they go to the Death Star and, they all get in, trooper outfits, and they sneak into like a quiet place where they can just talk and relax for a minute while they're really surrounded by all these enemies. And a Russian guard comes in, and Steve Harrington gets into a fight with the Russian guard, and he beats the Russian guard. Now, this is kind of funny because at that point, Dustin Henderson is like, "Hey, congratulations, you won your first fight," right? Like, which is pretty funny. But at this point, they're all the way in. They've discovered a major, they've really discovered a major breakthrough in the case, but they also are in a lot of trouble. Like, very genuinely are trapped inside this Russian base. Okay, so then we switch over and we go and we connect with Joyce and Hopper, and they are continuing to investigate on the Starcourt property. So they're taking this list and they're going and they're checking out these empty houses to determine, to solve the same mystery that the Scoops Ahoy team have already solved, right? But they actually get in there and they realize they find some Russian activity, and it is Anatoly, I think that's his name. He's the Russian scientist. And then also, they find him, and they find some Russians doing things in one of these properties. But at the same time, this Russian strongman is summoned, and he's quite interesting. He's clearly designed to be literally a lookalike for Arnold Schwarzenegger's, Terminator, right? And so he's this strong Russian enforcer, and he's interesting. I think one of the things that really kind of struck me was just how much we have really changed the culture, because he seems really kind of uninteresting. He's just a dangerous strong man, and in the 80s. You could get away with this. They were like, "Oh, he's intimidating, he's scary." But nowadays, we've just advanced villains so much more further, right? So I think it's one of the Duffer Brothers crush it. This was an offbeat. It's just like, I don't know if this needed to be in there. But he has a fight with Hopper, and they are trading blows, and kind of fighting each other, but they don't reach their fight keeps getting interrupted, right? And this is getting set up for their final fight at the end of the season, right? So at this point, we then jump over to Nancy and Jonathan. And Nancy and Jonathan connect with the basement team. And the basement team is Lucas, Mike, and Max, right? And 11, right? So, yeah. So at this point, we connect with them, and they are where? Oh yeah, and they're all continuing to search for Heather, this missing lifeguard. So they go to Heather's house. They go back to Heather's house, and this time they find a lot of weird stuff, because at this point Heather's been taken over by the Mind Flayer, the amalgamated flesh mountain, and so has her parents, right? And they have been consuming chemicals. Now, they ask Will Byers, like, hey, you had the shadow monster in you, did you consume chemicals? And that was not part of it. So the things from the upside down, they don't remain dormant, they change, right? Which is really, part of one of the reasons why they're very scary. And Will's like, no, I didn't really do that. So at this point, they Jonathan and Nancy are like, okay, we're gonna take this this further. And then they run off from 11 and Max and Mike and Lucas. Okay. And at that point that's right, they all stay together. And where do they go together? They go to see the woman that had the old rat woman, the old woman that had the rat problem in her basement, right? So they all go to her. Oh, and the reason they go to her is they want to find. Okay, they're like, okay, we know what's going on here. It's like these pod people. The Upside Down has some type of new big boss, big BBEG, and so we have to find it. And so Nancy's like, well, I know how to find it, right? These people want to return to their hidden place, right? And so right now, Nancy and Jonathan, Mike and Lucas and Max and 11, they don't know where the abandoned steel mill is. That's where the Mind Flayer is, and is building this army of like pod people. And but they don't know that yet. But Nancy figures it out, and she's like, well, let's go to the rat lady. They had to tie her up because she wants to return to her master. Let's let her go, right? And so at that point, all of the kids and Jonathan and Nancy go to the hospital. At the hospital, they run into the Hawkins chief and one of the Hawkins writers. And Nancy and Jonathan Byers get into an extremely dangerous, very real melee fight for their life. And the chief and the writer try to kill Nancy and Jonathan. And they're like, oh my gosh, these people are completely mind controlled. And Nancy and Jonathan Byers both have to kill these two Hawkins Post employees, right? And when they do, both of them reduce to their flesh mass blob form, and then literally form the actual Mind Flayer, which is at this point is about as big as two bears put together. Really large, really gross. Nancy and Jonathan both escape it, but the Mind Flayer has been formed at this point, and they all have to flee the actual hospital. And that's the entirety of that episode. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.